What are your names? Let's just dive in. What's your name?
Brenda.
Hi,
Rice.
Brenda. Nice to meet you.
I'm Zeb.
Zeb. Okay, I'm Erin. I think I'll share a little bit about my journey in politics, and if something comes to mind, throw up your hand, ask questions. I'm not a politician. Why then am I sitting here talking to you about politics? I'm an activist, I'm an educator, I'm a social entrepreneur. I am someone that I never thought would go into the political arena. I'm born and raised in the Bay Area. Activism, grassroots organizing, I think is hardwired into my DNA. And growing up, my mother, I watched her spring into grassroots activist mode. Marin County had the highest breast, prostate, and melanoma cancer rates on earth, and no one knew why. And I saw her organize a door-to-door campaign that was very much reminiscent of a political campaign, canvassing of our county. And a study came out that linked the ingredients in personal care products to cancer, birth defects, and reproductive harm. And that didn't equate in my head. That didn't make sense. So we started what's now a 12-year-old nonprofit called Turning Green in January of 2005. And I went through talking about behavior change, talking about conscious consumption, but also addressing advocacy, also addresses legislative action, also addressing this not just from the grassroots, from the bottom down, but from the bottom up, but also from the top down. And in October of 2005, our organization was about 6 months old, and we had the chance to go to Sacramento and lobby. And I'd never heard the word lobby at that point in my life. What did it mean? It meant that we had the chance, as a bunch of ragtag teens, to go and speak our truths to legislators. And it was this raw perspective that was different than what they were used to hearing walk into their offices day in and day out. And these 11th hour lobbying efforts changed the governor's vote on a bill related to disclosure of carcinogens. So that put some wind in our sails, and on we went. But still, politics, that wasn't me. That wasn't relevant to my life. And I joined a bunch of different movements around social justice. Yes, environmentalism is the filter through which I see my life, but related to, and I'll speak more about this tomorrow when we really delve into activism, but going to Haiti post-earthquake to dive into how do we build back better and what does that really mean? Working on environmental recycling, waste issues in West Africa, going to talk about environmentalism as a means of peace building, conflict resolution in the Middle East. And I came back to this country, and I was living in New York City at the time, and Eric Garner was killed on the streets of New York. I'm an activist. What did I do? I took to the streets. It was the first time in my life I'd ever actually taken to the streets, but what became more and more clear to me there was broken policy, specifically not just related to environmental and public health. Now we're talking about racial justice and criminal justice reform. And that became a focus of mine. We delved into it at the local level in Marin County as that relates to school lunch. And again, I saw broken policy. I saw this coming up time and time again. This was repeating. I didn't really know what to do about it other than addressing it from a grassroots level. And then I was walking down the street and I saw a picture of a 3-year-old boy wash up dead ashore in Turkey. Anybody see that image? Aylan Kurdi. This was in the end of the summer of 2015, almost 2 years ago. And something inside me snapped. And at that point I said, I have to go. I'm 2 hands, I'm 2 feet, I'm able-bodied. And I went and I worked with refugees in Lesvos and in Macedonia and in mainland Greece. And I came back and I went and I came back. And my friend said, Erin, you're just gonna keep going. And I said, no. I knew that something had to change on a larger level, on a more macro level. And here in the United States, I came back to this vitriol wherein governors across our country were closing their borders to human beings. And I gave a speech in March of 2016 about the impact of place, about the impact of Marin County on my life, on my value system, on my professional path. And I walked off stage and people said, how do we get you to run for office? I scoffed, I laughed in their face. I do not fit the mold of what I think of as a politician. I was 24 years old. I'm a woman. I've never held prior elected office. I don't have tens of thousands, let alone tens of millions of dollars in the bank. I could rattle off to you right now dozens of reasons why I should not run for office. And they said, that's exactly why you need to run, and you need to do so now in our hometown for Congress. And I went home that night thinking about what I had heard, still completely unconvinced that I could ever be a politician. Politician is a different breed of human being, right? And there were 11 days till the filing deadline for California's 2nd District. And so I started calling up friends, mentors, people that I respected. And everybody said, yep, you got to do it. And I don't know about you, but when I need my ego to be smacked down to size, I call my best friend. And so I called her up and I told her what had happened the night before. And she said, well, there are a million reasons why you could wait, but why not run while you wait? You know, there's those moments or those words that people say that will stick with you for the rest of your life. I know where I was when I heard that. She knows what tree she was sitting under in her hometown when she said that. Why not run while you wait? We're told in so many aspects of our lives, you're not ready, you're not old enough, you don't have the degree, you don't have the experience, you don't have the money, you don't have the fill in the blank. What if instead of waiting for someone to allot formal authority, to put us on this pedestal, to say, you, yes, you, now is your moment. What if we earn that respect? We seize that moral authority. So I started calling up other people and they said, yeah, run. And I was completely confounded. How was I going to run? And before I do anything, I have to convince myself that it's worthwhile. And my mom challenged me. She said, why would anyone vote for you launching a campaign 70 days prior to the primary election against an incumbent with virtually no name recognition and $0 in the bank? So I spent a lot of time thinking and writing and processing. And what I came up with was that this campaign was about redefining civic engagement, about reinvigorating a culture of public service, and expanding the definition of who can be a politician while adding value to society. I was going to make those 70 days count. I was going to start those micro movements. So I wrote an open letter to the world about why on earth a 24-year-old woman in her right mind would have the most remote desire to run for office, given that political landscape, which hasn't improved in the past 18 months. And I wrote a Medium post. I've set one tweet, one Instagram, one Facebook, and I sat there in my bedroom at 11 a.m. on Tuesday, March 29th, breathing heavily. Am I really going to do this? Who am I to decide that I can run? And I pressed post and I walked away. I went to take a shower, which I hadn't done in 48 hours. And I came back and my phone had exploded and my laptop had exploded. And this messaging had resonated so deeply, had shocked friends and family, yet they all said, surprised, I didn't expect this, yet it makes complete sense. And people, I started getting messages from young people. A boy in Northern California, up near the Oregon border, he said, Erin, I was never interested in politics because no one ever looked like me. No one ever talked like me. No one ever remotely understood what it's like to be me until you. And every single word, he called out lines and paragraphs in that letter, in my manifesto, that resonated with him. I heard from Marie Claire the next day. They wrote sort of the first big article. And that night, a girl wrote to me from South Carolina. She was 16 or 17 years old. She said, Erin, I walked into dinner last night with your article because my father had said politics wasn't for young people and it wasn't for women. And I said, if she can do it, I can do it. And suddenly I started to see that this wasn't just a tiny little grassroots campaign stretching from the Golden Gate to the Oregon border in California's 2nd District. This was a message that was resonating in every corner of this country and ultimately around the globe. But I needed to focus on the policy issues. I'm somebody that is not about talk, I'm grassroots. I needed to be here in my district. So we outlined 4 major areas, and tell me if any of these resonate with you. Environmental and public health, learning and the future of work, human rights, and tech innovation. Yes? Mm-hmm. Because what I'd heard from people for the past over a decade was that policy isn't relevant to my daily life. And when you start to think about all of these aspects, which are in fact controlled by government. We may not want to think that, but this is still the institution that runs our country. And when I consider the most talented, capable people I know, those who I would entrust with running my community, my state, my country, my friends, they're changing the world through disruptive startup models and building new economies. They're leveraging technology to take media to new heights. They're delving into the depths of science and research. Where's that innovative entrepreneurial spirit in politics? It's just not there. Most of them won't touch it with a 10-foot pole. It's too broken. It's too stagnant. It's too divided. It's too corrupt. Okay. So what happens when all of us decide to abandon ship? You get the same broken policies, the same broken system. So here we were talking about these issues, but I fully recognize that 24-year-old running for Congress was going to be met with backlash. She doesn't have a clue what she's talking about, naysayers, X, Y, and Z. So we had very clear policy positions to back up each of these. And I think that's part of what I learned through Turning Green, through the nonprofit, is I walked in the door of a journalist, of a politician, of a scientist's office at age 13, and I had to be that much more buttoned up, that much more articulate, have that much more sound science. The same was true at 24 running for Congress. If I knew then what I know now about going up against a multi-billion-dollar beauty industry at 13, I never would have done it. And if I knew then what I know now about going up against the political machine at 24, I might have thought twice as well. But thank goodness for that beauty in the naivete of youth to some degree. So there we were, environmental and public health. I'm incredibly passionate about toxins reform, which goes back to body burden and carcinogens in our daily lives. So comprehensive toxins reform is something that hasn't been passed in this country in decades. And I was there talking to mothers, talking to fathers, talking to teachers, talking to parents-to-be about toxins in our daily lives. Suddenly people go, oh, hold on, there's a policy solution to that? That affects my daily life. Why isn't that being implemented? Okay, we got people on board there. You talk about climate change. I'm an environmentalist. I'm a climate activist. And so much of it is doom and gloom. Has anybody ever gotten depressed thinking about what's happening literally to our Earth? You just are paralyzed. You give that shrug of inevitability. Oh, it's not really happening. It's not in my lifetime. Well, there's this amazing solution that lies beneath our feet, which is called soil, which has an incredible power to sequester carbon, to take it out of the atmosphere. And so we started talking to people who might not have a clue about the science of climate change, just about soil, as an opportunity to actually not just mitigate further degradation, not just prepare for changing climate, but actually reverse what had been done. So there we were, environmental and public health, talking about dirt. Glamour magazine wrote an article about our campaign. Why? Because I fit the profile of the Glamour reader. They devoted an entire paragraph of ink space to soil, to dirt, because that was the simple solution which has a clear policy backing. Environmental and public health was pillar one. Learning in the future of work. It's a fancy way of saying education and jobs. I graduated from university 4 years ago, feeling the burdens of student debt. The people making decisions about our education system graduated on average 40 years ago, 40 plus years ago. This makes absolutely no sense. So how do we architect a system that prepares us for the shifting economy? And I don't know about you, but my parents won't be able to retire at 65. That's not in the cards for my family. So what happens when industries disappear? What happens to this need for lifelong learning and remedial skills training? So again, you go out and you talk to people who don't think that politics is relevant to their daily life up and down the California coast here in this great state. And suddenly, they're thinking about their parents. They're thinking about their children. They're thinking about themselves if they're young people entering the job market. So they're on board. Human rights, broad umbrella. But I wanted to address gender issues. I wanted to address racial issues. I wanted to address immigration issues under this umbrella of human dignity, of recognizing that in another and honoring that. I believe that gender is a very interesting way to talk about this as a woman. Something like family leave. People go, don't play the woman card. Okay, mothers and fathers, old and young, whether you're having a child or you need to care for a parent. They go, oh, Okay, now you're not playing the women card. All right, we got you on board. And the last pillar was around technology. We're a stone's throw away from the tech capital of the world in my district. Talking about technology to make government more efficient, more effective, and more transparent. If you ask people in my district what's the issue that they care most passionately about, or what's the policy thing that plagues them the most, what do you think they say? This is true pretty much across the country. What do you think people say? One thing drives them nuts that they want to change in their lives to make their lives better.
Taxes.
You got the right first letter. Traffic. Traffic. If you ask people what really bothers them, what they think the government can do something about, they say traffic. This is pulled. And promising people that you're going to change traffic is like promising people that you're going to change the weather and make San Francisco not foggy all the time, right? This is impossible. Yet, so many politicians get up there and they say that they are going to change this. And they say we're going to build better roads and we're going to expand them and infrastructure and X, Y, and Z. And we started to talk about traffic by saying, well, right now in our district, most of the jobs are out of district. They're in San Francisco, so where are people driving south? So what if we put tech hubs? What if we create incubators all throughout this district to keep jobs and innovation in the district? That'll help your traffic problem. People go, okay. They're on board. So those sorts of innovative solutions. But there we were. Takes 11 plus hours to get up and down this district. We were up and down the district. Why? Because that matters. It matters to people that you show up. If you are building a campaign, whether it's a political campaign, whether you're starting a new business, whether you are building a grassroots effort, people want to see you. They want to know you. They want to look you in the eye and shake your hand and tell you what they think. To be recognized as a human being, not just as a number. But at the same time, 24-year-olds running for Congress, the Today Show came. They walked door to door. Why? To see how we were leveraging technology to democratize this process. The incumbent said we were justifying our entire campaign based on age and gender. If you're a 50-something-year-old white Christian heterosexual male with a legal degree, you just probably shouldn't say somebody else is playing identity politics. And that was very interesting because that made international headlines. So then we had CNN there talking about, yeah, you know what? There's a lot of things I can change. I can't change my age and I can change my gender, but I identify as a woman. I identify as a 24, then turned in the middle of the campaign, 25-year-old woman. 35% of our population in this country is under age 30. 51% of our population is female. There are 0 people under age 30 serving in our federal Congress today, and 18.4% of Congress is female. We call this the House of Representatives, when it is anything but representative. So how do we infuse more voices, more choices into that equation? We encourage people to run, to dare to do. That's the step that we need to switch. So here I was, 70 days up and down this district. It was magic. It was madness. And people said, Erin, if you get 2,000 votes, bravo. If you get 5,000 votes, well done. If you get 10,000 votes, that's amazing. You won't do it, but good luck. We got 21,000 votes in 70 days. We came up 6.6 points short of advancing in the primary on June 7th. And this isn't millennial Erin going, wow, we won. We didn't. We lost. I was in that election to win that election. I actually want to implement the solutions about which I spoke. However, for me, this has always been about purpose, not position. I think when you go into any endeavor, you think about why you're doing it. So my purpose remains steadfast. Position is in Congress, at least not today, but I'll tell you this. I've never done anything where I felt more relevant, where I felt people coalesce with such an urgency that compels me to step up and want to do it again. But this is not about me. This is about a movement of more people deciding that this is worthwhile. If you go back to the founding of our country, the founding fathers, if they were alive today, they'd be millennials. They were young people with bold, audacious visions for a different future. So we can't just accept this incremental change. We can't accept the status quo. We can't accept that only this type of person can run the country. That doesn't mean Congress or Senate all the time. That means state legislature, state assembly, school board, DA, city council, mayor. There are all of these positions. There are over 500,000 elected offices in the United States of America that we need to fill on a regular basis. And so it's been fascinating for me to see the way in which the conversation has changed over the past presidential election cycle. On both sides, you had candidates running in Bernie Sanders and in Donald Trump that were atypical politicians and that activated these masses and activated people who maybe hadn't entered the political sphere prior. Okay, so there's a lot of things that we can do. And we need people to run the private sector. We need people to go into business. We need people to be the grassroots activists. We need people to be the artists, the wellness leaders. We need people to be the academics. But this idea that you enter politics and you stay in politics for decades is a fundamental ill of our society today. That's not of the people, by the people, for the people. When you have people going into government and becoming beholden to special interests off the bat. Campaign finance reform was not on my agenda when we launched this campaign. It quickly became a key pillar. Why? Two things that win elections. Ideas? Well, yes, votes very quickly. Okay, money and what gets you the votes? Money and name recognition. Who has that? Largely celebrities. How do you build that? You become beholden to special interest groups. You take lots of money from super PACs, from donors, from who knows where shady sources. Lack of transparency entirely. 70 days was not enough. I think about it like a ramp. We were going up. We just couldn't get up high enough in those 70 days around either one of those. But going into politics should not be something we see as a commitment of 40 years of our lives. Imagine if we had a real culture of representative democracy, elected officials, public servants. This is a service to your nation where you go in, you're elected, you bring with you a wealth of experience that you hold from any number of walks of life, of avenues of industries. You serve your country. You learn a ton from being a part of that system, and you go back better because of it and having made the system better. And you have this sort of very healthy osmosis wherein politicians are no longer seen as this other breed of human being. That's what I envision for our country. But that demands that we step up, that we self-nominate, that we think we are enough, that we are ready, that we are prepared. And if this past presidential election has shown us anything, it's that but now I hope that we convert that into political will so that people do run. And such that we don't have a Congress continually made up of the same type of people, which, statistics, no bias, old, white, male. That's who's running the country. So how do we say, fine, I don't want a country run by 535 young women. It's a nice idea, but that's not what I want. We want representative democracy that looks like this country, that comes from the communities, the diversity, the fabric, the magic that is the United States of America. I believe in the promise of this nation. It's a beautiful, delightful experiment that we are still seeing. It's a promise yet to be fulfilled. So I don't want all of you to go out and run for office tomorrow. I want you to remain civically engaged, to take on these issues in our community, to vote with our dollars and at the ballot box. But don't count out that possibility of being called to serve and of answering that call, because we are worthy, we are ready, we are needed. If not us, who? Us, the most collaborative, most well-connected generation the world has ever seen. If not here, I mean, think about where we are. In Northern California, in this utterly spectacular slice of earth, so goes California, so goes the nation. Innovative, forward-thinking people that have set the tone for hundreds of years. If not here, where? And if not now, use whatever metaphor you will. Your feet are up to the fire, you're facing the wall, you're looking over the cliff. Too many people's health, wellness, sanity are in imminent danger. There is too big of a threat, and we know it. We see it, we feel it. If not now, at this moment, when we've seen one of the wildest elections of our history, when we are continuing to experience an unbelievable tumultuous political climate, we need people. We, the people, building grassroots movements, building businesses that serve, building entities that better our communities, and ultimately, hopefully, running for office and winning elected office. That is my wish for all of you. Thank you very much.